Well, some stark moments have marked the gender confusion debate that's been raging in the U.S. More intensely, it seems, in the last couple of years, but few were as stunning as the response of Ketanji Brown Jackson after she was asked for her definition of the word woman during her confirmation hearings. The now sitting Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court says she didn't know because she's not a biologist. How did something that is an objective reality confirmed by science and just plain common sense become controversial or indefinable? How did an educated woman in the United States of America come to this conclusion? One thing's for certain, we can no longer allow this agenda to be advanced by the highest leaders of the land or to permeate and pervert our culture without going unchecked and unchallenged. With me now to discuss this is an attorney and former law professor, Matt Barber. Matt, good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
All right, so we might want to listen to Matt. He was also an undefeated heavyweight professional boxer before retiring in 2004. So, you know, if you get an argument, he might just smack you around. I'm just kidding, Matt, of course. But here's one of the things. One of the things that is paraded around, and I'll use your career as a foundation for this. You could say, well, I identify as a woman now, and I want to go box in the ring as a trans female boxer. And some people would let you, and you would do real damage. You'd be a real threat to people, even though you haven't boxed in 20 years. Doesn't matter. You look like a formidable individual, and that's a dangerous precedent to set. Why do we allow this lunacy to persist?
Well, fortunately, it hasn't made the boxing ring yet. We see it in other highly competitive sports, in track and field, in powerlifting and gymnastics. Also, sadly, we are now starting to see it make its way into, and by it, I mean this transanity. That's what I call it. It is absolutely insane. There's a MMA fighter, last name Fox, for instance, a dude who decided, you know, as the story goes, you know, these swimmers and so forth, when they can't cut it, competing against men, these misogynists step in and decide to compete against women. Well, this Fox fella, he has bludgeoned a number of women in the MMA octagon on a number of occasions, one to the point that he crushed her orbital lobe, beat her so bad she had to be hospitalized. So we do see it making this transgender nonsense making its way into the combat sports, which that's where people can seriously get injured. It's unfair when we're looking at swimmers and gymnasts and track and field and power lifters, but when you start getting into the combat sports, it's no longer something that we can just be flippant and kind of joke about.
No, we can't. And I saw one of those MMA events. I'm not sure it's the same person you're referring to. But I saw a woman get seriously injured, had to be taken out, knocked flat cold. And look, I get that happens in boxing sometimes. But you raise the risk of injury when you have contact sports involving men and women. Now, look, when you're talking about, you know, middle school football and you see girls on the team here and there's even a college football player right now that's a woman. And I'm fine with that. But they have to understand the risks. And forcing this on people is absolutely wrong. But beyond that, this whole idea of not telling parents when their child wants to be Susie instead of Sam or whatever it is, we're going to keep it secret. This is a political agenda. And when you watch the fact that it goes from 1 in 30,000 people that express gender dysphoria to 1 in 30, well, then something's gone terribly wrong. And the advertising campaign brought to you in part by the Chinese Communist Party and TikTok, I think we should take a closer look at that, don't you?
Absolutely. And make no mistake, this whole idea of transgender, it's a social fiction. It's a social construct intended, frankly, to attack the very bifurcation and unique nature of male and female. It's an attack on God, frankly. And, you know, in Matthew 19, it's repeated, you know, in the beginning, God made them male and female. Well, this is the materialist leftist worldview that says, no, we get to define who we are. We get to say, what is male, what is female. I am objectively a male, but I can say that I'm a 6 foot black female lesbian NBA star if I want to. And under this, what I call, the Emperor's New Clothes meets George Orwell, we not only.
Well, just for the record, That's exactly what I thought of when I first saw you. Just, okay, so carry on. I mean, that's exactly what I thought when I looked at you,
Yeah.
Black lesbian NBA star.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, the Emperor's New Clothes meets George Orwell. So we all have to pretend that a man who claims to be a woman is somehow a woman, despite the Adam's apple, the 5 o'clock shadow, and calves the size of Arnold Schwarzenegger. We have to pretend that this dude in a miniskirt is a woman under penalty of law, and certainly all of the social media platforms. You'll get banned from Facebook. You'll get banned from Twitter if you simply state objective scientific reality. I've been banned from Twitter simply for saying that a man is a man, a woman is a woman. It's defined by their chromosomes. Period.
Yeah. For telling the truth. Well, Matt, I implore you to keep telling the truth, and thank you for being here and sharing this conversation. We'll have more of these in the future because, unfortunately, some folks want to continue to push this narrative, no matter how far-fetched it is. Matt Barber, thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Anytime, Steve. Thank you.
There you have it. I wouldn't want him on the other side of me, let alone a woman. All right, coming up after the break, Andy Biggs going to join me. He gave comments on the floor of the House yesterday, voted to remove Kevin McCarthy, a successful vote that he had. He'll tell us why straight ahead. Well, as you full well know, the Speaker's gavel back up for grabs today after the House dumped Kevin McCarthy as Speaker. First time in American history, a historic vote to say the least. House members voted 216 to 210, with Representatives Andy Biggs, Ken Buck, Tim Burkett, Eli Crane, Matt Gaetz, Bob Good, Nancy Mace, and Matt Rosendale joining all Democrats voting to take the gavel away and ousting him. McCarthy has stated he will not run again for Speaker, an election set for October the 11th, 1 week hence. Congressman Troy Nehls says he'll nominate former President Donald Trump to the position, and Congressman Jim Jordan says he plans on running, and so does Steve Scalise. They're both in the race now. Here to discuss all of it, Congressman Andy Biggs, who was one of the 8 who voted to oust the Speaker of the House yesterday. Andy, thank you for being here.
Steve, good to be with you.
All right, let's do the background here because you've got 210 people that are not pleased. So let's talk about the people that are pleased. A lot of people in this country are pleased that you moved and were involved with this. What is the genesis here? What was the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will? How did we get here? What did it take from Kevin McCarthy to irritate you to a point to say, look, we're going to vote to remove you?
So it began with me when we saw the debt ceiling play that he made. And I won't get into all the details, but he said he was going over there. He told us, I said yesterday in my speech, he laid it on the table that he was going to start at $1.5 trillion increase in national debt over 8 months. And he walked back a few days later with exactly what Joe Biden had asked for, which was no debt ceiling until January 25, because Joe Biden did not want it to be an issue in the presidential campaign. So we just gave away a political advantage, and we also gave away a policy advantage. So that was just like, I didn't know how to take that at that point. And you throw it in the context of the border and this notion where they kept saying, oh, we're going to do H.R. 2 or some version of it in a continuing resolution. Well, the problem with it is when you do a continuing resolution, you lose the advantage of the 12 spending bills that he promised he would do by a statute, which we're supposed to do. And when you lose that, that means you can't leverage against the administration. And that means that we can't enforce H.R. 2 even if it were to pass because the Biden administration is lawless. So all of those indicate to me that there was a super duper problem here, and it wasn't getting better. It was actually going the other way. And so you couple those two things together with another, just a failure to get things done with regard to he didn't release the J6 hours of tape that he said he would. He didn't bring either the term limit or the budget control bills to the floor. There's just a whole series of things that we are killing ourselves on, and the reality is we have not accomplished virtually anything. And so,
well, there's a lot of show votes out there. I'll tell you that. That's the thing I never understood. There's a lot of posturing and puffing up of chest, but votes that actually matter on things rarely seem to happen in Congress. So I guess my question is, where do we go from here? Because as you look at him being removed, there are several people that could be up for the job. Steve Scalise, Jim Jordan, their names are in the ring right now. If it were those two being considered, could you support either one of those folks?
Well, Steve, I have to confess I am now a pariah in the conference, as you might guess. And so if I say I'm going to support somebody, there will be 150 people who immediately say they will support anybody but that person because that's who Biggs wants. So I've chosen not to handicap anybody, but I can tell you what I do want. I want the most conservative person who can get 218 votes. And that's what I want. And if we can get that person, I think we can actually salvage this term and actually get some meaningful things done.
All right. So let me tell you what the critics are saying. And this will be no news to you, I understand. But critics say these 8 people burned down the House. These 8 people who complain about voting with Democrats voted with all the Democrats, who, by the way, are very clever. The Democrats are celebrating all of this, of course, because it creates all this confusion and chaos, and it hurts the Republicans and it hurts the country. But what do you say to people that say, hey, you voted with all the Democrats, you burned down the House, this was not the thing to do? Because that's what they're saying, the critics, 210 of them, plus however many more. How do you respond?
Well, first of all, I'll say this wasn't done chaotically. We used the bills. This was done in regular order. We used the rules, not the bills. We used the rules, and we did everything by the book, by the rules, that were passed unanimously, by the way, by every one of those Republicans that are complaining now. The rules were there. We used them appropriately. That's first thing. Second thing, is it chaotic? No, that wasn't chaotic because we followed the rules. Second, the other aspect of it is committees, hearings, depositions, all those can continue to go on, which is why I don't know why they released everybody for a week last night. They should have kept going with committees. They've got 2 bills for appropriations that still haven't even been voted out of committee yet. And so they should have gone to put pedal to the metal and had the Approps Committee get together and push those out. The third thing I would say is, what's chaotic is when you continue to do things like pass massive monolithic budget spending bills, just singles bills, not where we all get to go after them, that actually facilitate the imposition of Biden policies. And
I actually, if I may, Andy, I would extend that further, not just to spending bills. I think bills in general should be single subject bills, because what happens is you get these giant bills that are thousands of pages long that nobody ever reads. And like Nancy Pelosi says infamously, well, you have to pass it to find out what's in it. No, that's not how to run the railroad. And so I'm going to agree with you on that, but I think it should extend beyond just spending bills to all bills, so we have an idea, or at least make the bills alone. The entire New Deal in 1933 was 22 pages. Think about that. And here we are, doing thousands of pages on minuscule things when everybody packs stuff in there and everybody's looking to take some piece of candy home for their district. It's outrageous to me. It's outrageous to the American people. We're $33 trillion in debt. And so, therefore, I agree with you on the point of we need to get our fiscal house in order. But are we going to get there? We're on the clock again, we as a nation, for another debt ceiling challenge coming in November. What is it, November 17th, whatever it is. How is this going to slow things down? Apparently there'll be a vote 1 week from today. You're going to keep your vote to yourself, so therefore you don't create any sort of confusion or chaos around an upcoming candidate. But can we get there? Can we get a better bill? Can we reduce spending? Can we get security at the southern border? Can the Republicans have some leverage here in the aftermath of what happened yesterday?
Well, I think so. Last week we did 4 bills on the House floor in 72 hours, where you had literally hundreds and hundreds of amendments offered, debated, voted on. So the answer is yes, we can do it when we want to do it, but it takes leadership. We did it. For those people that voted yesterday to remove the speaker, we are the ones that drove that last week. If we hadn't taken the action that we did the week before that, we never would have been able to do those 4 individual spending bills. And you know what? One of those bills went down because the moderates voted it down. And that's fine. That's their prerogative. That's the way the system works. And nobody got mad at them for killing a bill that was supported and sponsored and promoted by the vast majority of Republicans. Nobody went after those guys. But they always go after the conservatives. And I don't have a chip on my shoulder about that. I just pointed out to say,
well, here's something, Andy, I want to clear up. I do want to clear this up. Because I watch social media a lot and I see all the back and forth, and I've only got about a minute left here, but I want to get to this. 210 people voted to keep Kevin McCarthy. You know that, of course. They're not all rhinos. I mean, Chip Roy and Ralph Norman, these are not rhinos. These are not, these are conservative people that voted. You people have a difference of opinion. I think I've got to go back to the Ronald Reagan idea of you can't sit there and attack fellow Republicans all day long. Even you as a pariah, your own words, not mine, in the caucus right now. There has to be some cohesiveness so that the Republicans can march together as a cohesive unit, because that's what the Democrats always do. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with it. That's why I say I'm okay with people voting stuff down. What I'm not okay with is not getting an opportunity to actually participate as a representative of your constituents to vote on single subject bills, as you said. And when you do that, actually what happens is you actually build opportunities and pathways to more negotiation. Why? Because people have more ability to have buy-in, and they have more ability to see what's actually going on, so they can participate with the eyes open and make decisions that they think is best for their constituents. And so I think in the end we're going to be better off for this. Short term, whenever you exit a suboptimal path, short term the cost can feel extremely high. But when you move to a more optimal path, then people say, ah, yes, this feels better. And I think that's what's going to happen here, Steve. That's what I really believe.
All right, Congressman Andy Biggs. Look, if you're a little short on invitations this season, you can come to my Christmas party, all right? It's going to work out. I mean, we have to go forward from here. All right, sir. Thank you very much for being here. There you go. Andy Biggs. I mean, he says he's a pariah. I believe that's true. He's probably not getting a lot of invites to the after-office party today. Anyhow, coming up after the break, High Point University in North Carolina got caught trying to force student organizations to fill a chair of diversity, equity, and inclusion. My friend Emily Sturge joining me next with that story. Don't go anywhere. Well, according to Turning Point USA, the Student Government Association at High Point University in North Carolina attempted to force student organizations to, quote, fill out a chair of diversity, equity, and inclusion in order for them to maintain official standing on campus. Student Government Association bylaws were amended in February of this year and posted to a university webpage despite lacking approval from the High Point administration. Student organizations were then informed they would need to conform to the new rule by filling the new position, including DEI chair. Here with details is Emily Sturge from Campus Reform. Emily, nice to see you again.
Awesome to see you, Steve.
So are we talking about the chess club, you know, the intramural basketball team? Well, what are we talking about here? That everybody has to have a DEI, you know, designated individual. What are they referring to?
Steve, we're talking about all groups on campus. That includes conservative groups, that includes leftist groups. And what's happening here is High Point University student government is silencing any student organizations who do not adopt these leftist policies. And let me be clear, this is a clear violation of students' First Amendment rights. These are rights that don't just stop once a student walks onto their campus. All students, liberal, conservative, all students have the right to gather and speak their minds on their campus, not just leftist student groups. Speech restrictions like this specifically are targeting conservative student groups, making it much more difficult for conservative students like myself to express themselves on college campuses and exposing them to unequal treatment.
So if you're part of the campus chess club or whatever you're party to. If you don't have the DEI position filled, you're just automatically disbanded? Is that what I'm hearing, that you're just out?
Well, what you're hearing is, yes, students are being silenced if they don't abide by these leftist policies and really take part in these DEI principles. But conservative groups on college campuses, we're used to this. We're used to facing unequal treatment from university administrations and student government. And this story is unfortunately just another example. For example, Wayne State University, they only recognized a Christian student group on their campus after the students had to actually sue and won their case in federal court. And conservative groups on campuses also receive much less funding and have a much harder time finding faculty advisors. We've reported that at the Leadership Institute's campus reform, and specifically at my university, the University of Florida student government gave a socialist student club 15 times more funding than a conservative group. That shows which values student government and which values the campus administration, which values they support. They're supporting the leftist students, and that's completely unfair.
Yeah, I would say this is ridiculous. But it's a pattern. It's a symptom of things that are going on all over this country all the time, Emily, and it needs to stop. And hopefully the folks at High Point will get the message. I'll give you the last word.
Well, students deserve to have their First Amendment rights protected by their universities because free speech is imperative to a free society, and it's imperative on college campuses. What students learn on college campuses, they're going to bring to society one day. They're going to bring that to the workforce, and they're going to bring that to the voting booth. So it's extremely important for students to be able to have these constitutional rights on campus and for university administrations to stand up for these rights of students.
There you go. Emily, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Steve. Good to see you.
We'll talk soon. And we'll get back to the news after this quick break and a message from our sponsor, Birch Gold. Last month, the G20 announced a plan to impose digital currencies and digital IDs on their respective populations. Central bank digital currencies essentially allow the government to track everything you do with your money, everything. They can even allow officials to prohibit you from buying things that they don't want you to buy, or freeze or even seize part or, yes, all of your money. In essence, they enable the government to take more control over your finances. Certain Americans are diversifying their assets into physical gold with the help of Birch Gold. If you want a physical asset held in a tax-sheltered retirement account, you should call Birch Gold right now. And learn for yourself. Text America to 989898, and they will send you a free information kit on gold. The easiest way to become a Birch Gold customer? Well, if you have an IRA or 401k from a previous employer just gathering dust, Birch Gold can help you convert that into an IRA in gold, and you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Text America to 989898 right now. Claim your free information kit on gold, and then call them, because if digital currency becomes a reality, it would be nice to have some real gold fall back on. All right. Still to come today, 53% of Americans believe the Republican Party will do a better job at keeping the country prosperous, which shouldn't be that hard with Bidenomics in effect. That story straight ahead on ABL. Well, the D.C. machine might be broken, but at the end of the day, most Americans still want the GOP in charge of, well, pretty much everything. According to a new series of Gallup polling, 53% of Americans believe the Republican Party would do a better job of keeping the country prosperous, as opposed to only 39% who believe the same about Democrats. 57% trust the GOP to protect our nation from international terrorism and military threats, while 35% think the Democrats could do a better job. It's almost like Americans are starting to believe Democrats are truly the America Last Party, who care more about political correctness and themselves than reality or national security. The 14-point percentage lead the Republicans hold on major issues is up 4 points. 4 points it's up from last year, where it sat at 10. It is the widest advantage the Republicans have held since 1991. So, again, Democrats, while you're celebrating this whole change in the speakership, I wouldn't celebrate too long or too loud, just saying. The Capitol Police have issued a statement on its ongoing investigation on the fire alarm that was pulled in a congressional office building ahead of the spending vote over the weekend. The statement details the events that occurred as, quote, a man was seen trying to exit the door in the Cannon building and then pulling the fire alarm that prompted the evacuation. USCP officers had previously placed signs with clear language that explained the door was secured and marked as an emergency exit only. You see what's missing? The name of the member of Congress that pulled a fire alarm, a former high school principal, Congressman Jamel Bowman, Democrat. He can be seen in the video. He's admitted to the crime and dominated headlines all weekend, so why won't the Capitol Police name him? Yeah, you'll figure it out. A police report in the interview that the police held with Bowman still hasn't been released, but I'm sure that'll be more interesting. Of course, that is if we ever see it. The Supreme Court will not be taking up a case this new term that seeks to disqualify former President Donald Trump from the 2024 ballots of the various states. Write-in Republican candidate John Anthony Castro sued Trump earlier this year, claiming that the post-Civil War provision in the 14th Amendment barred the former president from running, quote, given his alleged provision of aid or comfort to the convicted criminals and insurrectionists that violently attacked our United States Capitol. The case has been denied without any comment or recorded vote. Similar lawsuits have been filed in Colorado, New Hampshire, Michigan, and Arizona, all headed exactly nowhere. An Iranian official is claiming Iranian responsibility for multiple terrorist attacks of the 1980s that cost hundreds of American lives. The Middle East Media Research Initiative obtained an audio recording of an interview with the Islamic Republic of Iran's representative to Lebanon, Syed Tabatabai. It's unclear when the interview was taken, but Tabatabai tells the Islamic Republic News Agency that he, quote, provided what was needed in order to carry out martyrdom operations in the place where the Americans and Israelis were, Lebanon. Tabatabai went on to claim that they partnered with the terrorist movement Hezbollah in keeping up military operations. It cost hundreds of lives. Hezbollah has been blamed for bombing the U.S. Embassy in Beirut in 1983. 63 people died there. And for enlisting suicide truck bombers that same year in an attack that killed 220 U.S. Marines, 18 Navy sailors, and 3 Army soldiers, along with 58 French troops at the barracks in Lebanon. Tabatabai says he received the orders from Ayatollah Khomeini, the father of the Islamic Revolution. This is significant because no official representative of the Khomeini or of Iran's supreme leader has ever acknowledged that they had any involvement in the bombings, but we know now. What will we do about it? It's time for the White House to demand reparations or take some bolder step, but I wouldn't hold your breath, all right? There is an organization that still backs Obamacare, gun control, extreme transgender policies that endanger our kids, and they claim to be bipartisan, but last year that organization, well, it gave 95% of its donations to Democrats. That's AARP. AARP doesn't represent the values of American seniors. Fortunately, there is a conservative alternative, AMAC. The Association of Mature American Citizens proudly champions Americans' rights to free speech, religious liberty, and the Second Amendment. AMAC defends parents' rights to protect their kids and is fighting to restore America's election integrity. With more than 2 million members nationwide, AMAC is growing. They're pro-faith, pro-family, and, of course, pro-freedom. I'm a proud member of AMAC, and I encourage you to join today. Let's send AARP a strong message that they don't represent conservative seniors. Join AMAC. Am I a senior? Oh, that hurts. Join AMAC today at amac.us/voice. That's amac.us/voice. All right. Thank you for being here. I'm a senior. After the break, we'll have a story that reminds us of how wonderful America is, plus your answers to the America's Voice question of the day. You know, I always like to leave this program with you feeling good about things. We talk about a lot of serious things. You might feel good already after the political upheaval yesterday. It might fit in with what you wanted. But here's something that makes you remember how wonderful America is. Two young men showed class and outstanding character and sportsmanship at a high school track meet in Wisconsin. Cooper Erickson and Ethan Olds were racing when their competition fell right before reaching the end of the race. Their competitor fell. The two of them immediately turned around, picked up their comrade, helped carry him across the finish line. Oh, it was remarkable. Listen. Cross country. I wouldn't do it, but I'm glad you would. They allowed that young man to place how he would have fallen had he not fallen, and the boys showed considerate sportsmanship to one another. Really like that, by the way. Check this out.
I know our team has great respect for people that give their best efforts, and that's what he did. He just came up 10 feet short, so I think we both just kind of felt like he deserved to finish that one.
He did deserve to finish. All that practice, all that hard work. I've watched people run cross country. Ouch. You're better human beings than I am. That's what makes America wonderful. Courage, selflessness demonstrated by those young men. Raise one another up at critical times and share victories together. All right, so how about that question of the day? How do you feel about Kevin McCarthy being dumped, ousted, yanked from the speaker's chair? Dale Malusi says 15 ballots to get elected. He didn't have the support from the start. Bye-bye. Richard Finn, love it. Remember the fight in January for him to get the job? He lied to get it. He stole all leverage to get anything done or stopped. giving the rhino cowards cover to pass along Joe Biden's spending and Ukraine World War III spending push. Those going after Gates and the other 7 have unmasked their true rhino horn and are true enemies, same as the left. I think that's a bit overbroad, but it's what he said. Patricia Fife Beauregard, I'm not happy about it at all, but I'm not happy with any of them except Senator Kennedy of Louisiana. He should be in charge of everyone. He says it like it is. Love him. All right, it's Kennedy in charge of everybody. That Kennedy, not the other one. Tim Schaefer, Kevin McCarthy is a whip that speaks with a forked tongue and needed to be fired. He's still there. Remember, now you got to get his vote to get stuff done. Larry Van Vliet didn't do the job, so he had to go. And Gabby McCauley writes this, McUseless had it coming. Rhino. All right, we're going to leave it there for today. Another big day, of course. Is there ever a dull moment around here? The answer is no, there's not. All right, so there it is. Let's see here. Don't forget to go to stevegruber.com. Drop me a note. Tell me what you're thinking. How's it going in your neck of the woods? What do you like? What do you not like? And if you don't like me, you can write that too. I can take it. I'm okay with it. I've been doing this a long time. SteveGruber.com. Check that out. Don't forget to start your day tomorrow right here with the Steve Gruber Show, starting at 6 a.m. right here on Real America's Voice. And then I'll meet you right back here tomorrow afternoon for America's Voice Live.
Here are some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. On Capitol Hill, House Republicans are looking for a new speaker. That's because Kevin McCarthy dared his enemies to vote him out, and they did. The first time that has happened. We've got the list of 12 potential replacements. The FBI reported that for 50 straight months, gun sales have topped 1 million. But experts see a shift from buyers eager to take advantage of their Second Amendment rights to Americans, especially women and minorities, preparing to protect themselves from surging violence. Arizona Republican Carrie Lake has made it official. She filed papers to run for the Senate and challenge Senator Kyrsten Sinema. In an election likely to be dominated by Donald Trump, Lake could win. And Mark Zuckerberg really took seriously his preparation for the canceled boxing match with Elon Musk. We've got the proof in a photo showing the whooping he got during one sparring match. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
Office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
My fear is the institution fell today because you can't do the job
that television network decided to pull down the interview and hide that it ever even happened. This is how the deep state operates. We're going to talk to ex-CIA analyst Larry Johnson about what this means for the war. What does the future portend for this conflict? And we're also going to look at 9/11. So the 9/11 attacks. We have some really unbelievable news on the 9/11 attacks. We might actually start to get some answers, because a family has now been able to move forward with an inquest in the United Kingdom. The Attorney General in the United Kingdom came back and said, yes, we're going to actually allow this to move forward. So what answers will we get? The controlled demolition of the towers? Will we find out that information? We will get to that tonight.
Plus, we're going to take a look at the new Novavax COVID vaccine that was approved by the FDA today. Clayton, would you like to take a guess? How many clinical trials were done?
If I was a betting man, I would say 0.
0. How many animal trials were done?
Did they use like 6 mice?
0. 0 animals. 0 clinical trials. We're going to tell you exactly why the FDA decided that was a great idea.
And also, we've got a very special guest. Dr. William Mackis is going to be joining us from Canada on some unbelievable news as it relates to turbo cancers. But for that story, a little bit later in the show, we're going to have to move exclusively to Rumble because YouTube will not allow us to cover that story here on the show.
Oh, and we also are going to talk about, that's not in the rundown, net neutrality as well is back, you guys. Yeah. Democrats all of a sudden decided that they are for free speech. It's an amazing flip-flop. We're going to talk about that coming to an arguing Democrat near you. All of that and more as Redacted starts right now.
Welcome in, everyone. So glad to have you all here on this Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Let us know from around the world where you are finding us tonight. I always love seeing the furthest locations from us, or, you know, the most unique locations. It doesn't have to be unique. I guess I love seeing Louisiana. I saw Cameroon the other night, Iceland, South Africa. So great to see all of you.
Everywhere is exotic in its own way.
Yeah. And by the way, we're not going to be live tomorrow night. We have the day off tomorrow, but so we'll be doing a little bit of traveling. But so it'd be great to see if anyone sees us in airports and so forth. Please say hello. We always love seeing you guys.
Yeah, tap us on the shoulder. That's right. Say hello.
Punch us in the nuts.
Don't say in front of our kids, like someone did, how are you still alive for telling all this truth? So you can whisper it to us, but my mother-in-law didn't like hearing that last time.
I loved it. I was like, hey, nice to meet you in London. And
our children and our mother-in-law was at Clayton's mom were like, what?
Yeah, we were all together. He said, I don't know, I love your show. He said, how are you still alive with the all the truth that you guys do on the show? And I was like, I don't know.
Well, let's all knock on wood. Can you knock on wood at your house too, please? We would appreciate that. In the meantime, we're going to tell you a different place that you can find us. You can find the newsletter that we do every day, Monday through Thursday, the same days that this show comes out. And it is a compendium to this very show. So it has a lot of the same stories that we do in this show, but it's in written form. It's also a great place for you to find the links to those stories and read those things for yourself so that you can see whether or not you agree on our take. I love to hear when you do or when you don't, when people write me about the newsletter. So put in your email address, just authenticate with the email that we send you saying, yes, I meant to sign up for this. And then you are a Redacted Rebel. It's a totally free subscription. Free newsletter, free subscription. All you have to do is just open it up and enjoy. And again, you can find it free at redacted.inc. Again, it's our beloved newsletter. We have no people that write it with us. It's just Clayton and I. So again, it's redacted.inc.
We're getting some unbelievable admissions now in the war in Ukraine. First from the Ukrainian side and also from reports of captured Ukrainian soldiers high on some kind of drugs that are, I guess, propelling them on the front lines to do things they wouldn't otherwise do, according to reports. But we're also getting now reports from the Ukrainian side, unbelievable admission about where this war is going from a member of Ukrainian's own parliament. Now, this interview was featured on Sky News. Sky News has now deleted this interview. Was it something she said? Listen.
It's the latest situation. The counteroffensive is going as planned. Is it going as planned? Well, as much as we can have it going as planned with the amount of weapons and the quality of the ammunition that we're getting. The steadier the deliveries and the bigger the deliveries of the armaments for Ukraine, the faster the counteroffensive can go. That's the problem is you've regained, what, less than 1% of the ground that you lost before the invasion? Unfortunately, that is the case. And you only have like another month to go before? Another month or so before the cold and the winter settles in, before we can before we will have to actually pause until the springtime. And this is the sad news for us, and I think not just for us, but all the countries that are supporting Ukraine right now. Is that continuing? Because I get the impression, I'm certainly told, that there is you're having to try harder and harder to get aid, specifically from Europe and other Western countries. It is getting harder and harder because Russia is winning the battle of a protracted conflict today. So they are winning. In terms of protracted conflict strategies that they're trying to impose on Ukraine and the world, unfortunately, we have to say that they are gaining the upper hand yet again. They have done this back in 2014. The lessons weren't learned. The aid was being delivered too slowly and at a non-stable rate, and this is the results that we are getting. I am a firm believer that Russia could have been stopped with their escalation of the aggression in February 2022, when Ukraine was asking for weapons through January, through October, November, December 2021, but was not being taken seriously, and when the offer on the table for us Ukrainians was to surrender to Putin's demands.
So Ukraine is running out of time, they're running out of weapons, they're running out of personnel. And we wanted to bring in ex-CIA analyst Larry Johnson, who follows this all very closely, to dive into this. Larry, a couple of big things I want to cover with you today. But first, I just want to get your response to what this woman, Leslie, has said about the truth about what's happening in Ukraine right now. They're admitting Russia's winning.
Yeah, well, it's evident if anybody's just been paying attention. Look at social media. Social media is the one thing that no government in the world can completely, fully control. They can try to shut it down. So when you go to social media, you see row upon row upon row of Ukrainian flags fluttering over freshly dug graves. Thousands of these. You don't see that in Russia.
Right.
So right there, it tells you right away that the casualties are in Ukraine. The average age of the soldier fighting on the front lines for Ukraine is 40 years old. That means you may have one or two who are 17 or 18, but you got a lot more fighting on the age of 40. Ukraine that speaks to a manpower loss. Just put the losses in context. Right now, it's estimated that Ukraine has lost over 500,000 men killed in action.
Wow.
During World War II, the British, the United Kingdom, its entire killed in action in both Europe, Africa, and the Pacific was 345,000. That was after 6 years of war. So we need to understand that what's unfolding right now in Ukraine is unbelievable carnage.
And the winter approaching. She admits that only a few weeks left, of course, until the cold weather, the immobilization of these troops, and basically admitting whatever sort of counteroffensive they had, they haven't really gained anything at all. In fact, it's been maybe inches here and there, and over close to 100,000 killed now just in this counteroffensive.
Yeah. What people didn't understand is that the defensive lines that Surovikin erected a year ago, they were not designed like the Alamo, where you stand and fight and, Jim Bowie laying on his bed, throwing a Bowie knife as he's getting killed. Right. They are designed to be flexible. So when they come in, they bend, and then the Ukrainians go into what's called a salient, and then they get attacked from the side, and they're forced back out. So it's think of it more like a rubber band. But the truth of the matter is, and it was even reported by the New York Times, is that total land captured, Russia's captured far more than Ukraine. But this isn't about capturing land. It's about the question of, do you have a force that is trained, that you can sustain in the field, and that has a good logistics flow to it? And that's what's breaking down on the Ukrainian side. They're utterly dependent upon money from the West and weapons from the West. And in the last 2 or 3 days, we've had the British even admit, hey, we've run out. We don't have any more to send.
Right. This is a big revelation from the British side. We don't have any weapons to send, and frankly, we're out of money to send. And according to Ben Wallace, a former UK defense secretary, says Zelensky must start mobilizing young Ukrainians more. So now you've exhausted just about everything. Now let's start going into the youngest of the young and throwing them onto the front lines. And as you've been reporting on your Telegram and on your website, the countless number of young Ukrainian men in the funeral processions that you're not seeing in Western coverage. I mean, open caskets of Ukrainian soldiers, weeping mothers, weeping wives, people lining the streets as caskets are being brought down the Ukrainian streets. And you're not going to see that on CNN.
Right. Now, and it's what it's doing to the Ukrainian population. Look back again at World War II as a benchmark, as a reference point. The United States lost 472,000 killed in action in the Pacific and Europe and Africa. And we had a population then of about 160 million. Here's Ukraine, whose population right now in country is estimated to be around 25 million. And they've lost more people, more men than either the United States or Britain did during World War II. So this is approaching sort of, it's reminiscent more of the Chaco War back in Paraguay, where you lost an entire generation of men. And it's going to depopulate Ukraine. There will be nobody to have children. There will be no fathers.
What about, you've been covering this as well, and we wanted to talk about the drugs that are being used. Can you speak about this with these soldiers and the reports of this?
Well, this comes from a Russian correspondent, goes by his name is Marat, and I was conversing with him yesterday, and he says, what kind of drugs could these guys be using? And he says they're picking up these prisoners, and they're just whacked out of their minds. And he says that they actually go through withdrawal. He says some of them, it takes up to a week. And he says, but the effect of the drug is it takes away any reservation about putting themselves at risk. Now, I know in the early days when Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 were first set up in the United States, there were drugs that were given to these soldiers either to help them go to sleep or to keep them awake. And so that's 40 years ago. So I am willing to guess in the last 40 years, there's been some medical research. In fact, there were a lot of DARPA labs there in Ukraine. And if they were doing medical research, biological research into drugs that you can give to people that will eliminate any inhibition about putting their lives at risk and turn them into sort of super soldiers, I think that's what we may be seeing here. Because this was not a piece of propaganda. He wasn't trying to feed me a story. He was legitimately puzzled by it. He says, we've never seen anything like this.
It's unbelievable. So then after they're captured or after they're surrendering, I mean, do we even know if these are surrendered soldiers or captured? Because if they're on these drugs, the chances of them surrendering are probably, I don't know, maybe slim to none, but that's just my conjecture, Yeah,
these are captured. These are ones that are capturing on the front lines. And the situation has turned, it's really so dire for the Ukrainians, because if you're wounded and you've been shot or you've caught some fragments, if you can walk out or if you can move yourself, then you can probably get medical care. But there are reports that soldiers that have been wounded are having to pay bribes to get themselves taken back to a medical aid station on the Ukrainian side. So the morale on the Ukrainian side is just suffering some really significant setbacks.
Can you also talk about the soldiers and the reports that you've had? This has been fascinating to see the lack of armored personnel carriers, the lack of armored vehicles, and so forth. And now Ukrainian soldiers being forced to go on foot and or bicycle to attack the Russians. What do we know about that?
Yeah, there's one video that's popped up on social media, on Telegram. And this guy's got a bicycle with a bunch of landmines strapped to it, and he's moving them forward along a dirt road. The reality is the armored vehicles are a target, and Ukraine doesn't have any way to protect them. In a normal conventional army, if it was functioning properly, there would be some air cover, fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters. There would be some mobile artillery so that they could at least lay down a field of fire as these guys would move forward. Well, they don't have that. That's not happening. The Russians, on the other hand, have ample amounts of artillery ammunition. They've got the fixed-wing aircraft. They've got the helicopters. And so they're able to just devastate anybody in an armored vehicle or a tank. So they've come up, their solution is to try to infiltrate guys in on foot. I don't know if you've ever carried a box of ammunition, but a box of .308 ammunition weighs over 40 pounds.
Yeah, it's very heavy.
And you will shoot through that if you load that up in any kind of automatic weapon. You will go through that in a period of about 15 minutes. So just the amount of weight you have to carry, putting soldiers in this position makes their combat ineffective. And you're forgetting about what about the food? What about the water?
Right.
Water itself is heavy. Go fill up a couple of gallon jugs of water and walk around with those. Well, how much water do you think a guy on the front line needs? So these very practical considerations, the thing that touting, well, hey, they're walking in on foot, that's a great strategy. That's ridiculous.
Well, one of the things that famously U.S. Grant became president of the United States, General Ulysses S. Grant during the Civil War, was famous for was making sure that everyone had provisions and everything was fully stocked. Yeah. And making sure that reinforcements were there, and all of the army will break down and collapse without the water, without the food, without the provisions, without the ammunition, without all of those things. It may seem to other people's minds secondary to the fighting, but in fact it is the most important part of the fighting.
Yeah, and in fact go back to World War II. One of the signs of the collapse of Germany was you saw German soldiers in horse carts. So they were driving horses to pull artillery pieces. They didn't have the fuel to run the vehicles. So that's a sign of collapse. It's a sign of this thing is going to come to an end, and it may come to a very rapid end, just like what we saw in Afghanistan. Remember, we were promised that the Afghan army was going to fight on for years, and they were the best in the area, and then boom, overnight, they were gone in a week. So that I actually think that is a possibility here with respect to Ukraine.
What are your intelligence sources telling you as it relates to this back and forth right now? It sounds like we're seeing a couple of media reports. We've seen a couple of mainstream media reports that are showing some negativity towards Ukraine. Politico releasing that leaked State Department memo showing the corruption, the State Department admitting to the massive amount of corruption inside of Ukraine, and a couple of other odd-timed mainstream media pieces about Ukraine being corrupt, about them their offensive collapsing, and then of course we have this turnover in Congress right now with funding going into Ukraine. The British saying they have no more weapons. It all smells funny to me, but I'm not I'm not an ex-CIA analyst. So on the outside, Larry, what's going on here?
There's a brawl underway. There's a big fight. So when I first got into the CIA and we first held clearances and started seeing classified information, I quickly discovered that when you've got a policy issue that everybody agrees on, there are never any leaks. That it's kept close, tight. The leaks come when there is fighting between people with different points of view about what's going on. And so when you see it, and so this leak out of State Department is significant as well, because that is so damning in terms of the corruption argument, because it feeds into what many Republicans have been arguing, that there is no financial controls over the aid that's being sent to Ukraine. And it's being siphoned off. I mean, 60 Minutes reported on that a year ago. and then took down the report or edited it out to make sure they could cover that up. So when you see these kinds of leaks, it's a sign that the unity that was once there in the U.S. government no longer exists, and it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better.
Fascinating. Larry Johnson, always great to see you. Encourage everyone to read. Can you tell everyone your website and where people can go to read more about your daily coverage?
Sure. My primary site is sonar21.com, sonar21.com.
That's right. And Larry was telling me before you and I were texting a little bit earlier about like the amount of people who've been really coming and reading your site. So the traffic, I think people are really seeking the truth there, which is amazing. So keep up the amazing work. As always, Larry, great to see you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Clayton.
Thanks, Larry.
It's a somber truth.
Yeah, that's really great. Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. And it's one of those things where Larry's website being hit by so many people coming there, which is great. People seeking the truth and looking for answers. So our thanks to Larry for taking some time out and talking with us. But this is unbelievable. You have this admission from Ukraine on television, and then Sky News makes it disappear. Like, oops, we can't have you saying that.
Yeah.
Oh, you just admitted the truth live on television? Can delete from the website. It reminds me of when Fox News did that with Brett Baer interviewing Zelensky about the Azov battalion. Good luck finding those clips.
Yeah.
Thank God to social media for saving those things. But yeah, good luck finding that on Fox's website.
Right.
You won't find it.
Well, we have more news to get to. Coming up, we're going to talk about new revelations about 9/11 and possible opportunity for answers out of a new litigation. We're also going to talk about the latest COVID vaccine that was approved by the FDA by Novavax, and how little they know about it. They willingly say that. We're going to take a look at that. Plus, net neutrality is back as a debate we are going to have. It is much different now than it was during the Obama years, because I'm just going to give away the lead a little bit. It's a government power grab for censorship. I'm going to make that case. I don't think I'm going to have to persuade you all that hard, but it is written out in black and white, and we're going to look at that as well.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to get to all of that and more, but first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Bank on Yourself, because do you know the whole max out your IRA or 401k is usually a ruse to convince you to invest in the stock market with the government as your partner. So, those commercials you see on NFL Sunday, this is pretty much a lie. It's propaganda. They're telling you that if you risk your life savings in a Wall Street casino, that's a secure investment for the future. Yet studies show that the average American who follows that advice will outlive their savings by 10 years because the Bank on Yourself plan, it will be zero. So if you want guaranteed, predictable annual growth, control of your money, and tax-free retirement, then go to bankonyourself.com/redacted, and you'll get a free report with the proven retirement plan alternative that banks and Wall Street are desperately hoping you never hear about. Just go to bankonyourself.com/redacted for your free report. That's bankonyourself.com/redacted.
Well, a major breakthrough now in one family's mission to finally get answers around the 9/11 attacks and how did their son die on that day, Jeff Campbell. Did jets really bring down the Twin Towers, or was it a controlled demolition, as the evidence seemed to suggest, including eyewitness accounts of what happened on that day? We had Matt Campbell on the show a number of months ago, the brother of Jeff Campbell, who has been fighting to get answers about what happened to their son from the UK. And now we have some major possible good news in this, in the search for answers. Ted Walter is the co-founder of the International Center for 9/11 Studies. He's been dedicating his life to getting answers for the families of the victims of 9/11. And Ted joins us now with a pretty big breakthrough, I think, in this case. Ted, can you kind of set the stage for us, the email that you received, you and the Campbell family received in trying to get answers about this inquest?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Clayton. So last Friday, a week and a half ago, the family and their barrister, Nick Stanage, received an email from the Attorney General's office. Now, this is the Attorney General for England and Wales, so it's pretty much the equivalent to our Attorney General. And the email was basically notifying them that the Attorney General was withdrawing the decision that the Attorney General had issued a few months ago in late June to deny the family their application, seeking the authority from the Attorney General to apply to the High Court for a fresh inquest. So there's a few hoops that the family has to jump through to get their new inquest, but essentially the Attorney General said no back in June. And then the family wrote a letter to the Attorney General early September 11th, actually, saying that they would seek judicial review. Essentially, they would appeal the Attorney General's decision, and they laid out all of their reasons why the Attorney General's decision was totally unlawful and irrational. And, the family didn't know how the Attorney General was going to respond to that. They were prepared to file their documents on September 26th. And just a couple of days before that, the Attorney General responded withdrawing the decision. So it's almost the only better outcome that could have occurred at this juncture was for the Attorney General to completely change the decision. The Attorney General has done almost that. They've withdrawn the decision to deny the application, and they've said that a new decision will be coming in due course. And we anticipate, we're very confident that the new decision is going to be positive because there's no reasonable grounds upon which to deny the application.
So the inquest, at the heart of the inquest, is trying to get answers about how their son died. Now, as part of the UK government, if sadly pieces of the body are recovered and sent back to the UK, under the government, under the law, the family has a right to seek an inquest as to how that person died. And it's amazing we really haven't had the equivalency in the United States, right? I mean, this could be our one big chance to find out exactly how he died that day and whether or not jets were responsible or whether or not there was a controlled demolition of those towers.
Absolutely. And I have to give the UK judicial system some credit for having this function of having an inquest anytime there's an unnatural death. It's not a civil case. It's not a criminal case. It's a separate legal process where a coroner, who is a judicial officer, establishes the cause of death. Now, the family and 9 other victims, Jeff Campbell and 9 other victims, there were inquests held for them back in 2013, all as one. And the conclusion, which is what the family is challenging, is that the impact of the airplane, in Jeff's case, the North Tower, Flight 11 into the North Tower, caused the tower's collapse at 10:28 a.m. That's what it says in the official conclusion, the cause of death for Jeff. So that's what the family is challenging. And their grounds for challenging that are very strong. First of all, they have new evidence, thousands of pages of evidence that was not considered at the first inquest. So that is one ground for reopening it. And it's not the Attorney General's decision, place to decide whether that evidence is compelling or how compelling it is. If there's even a remote possibility that the new evidence could change the original conclusion, a new inquest must be held if the family wants it. Secondly, they're challenging that the coroner in 2013 actually didn't investigate or even consider the causation between of how the building collapsed. There was absolutely no discussion of it during the inquest, and yet she wrote that into the official conclusion. So that's sort of an open and shut case. That's another grounds for challenging this insufficiency of inquiry. So when the family got the decision back from the Attorney General, I mean, this is a slam dunk case. And the decision in June, which the family had to wait almost 2 years for, completely was completely unlawful. It did not apply the correct legal tests that I just described. And it made irrational statements like the eyewitness and scientific evidence of controlled demolition would not have an impact or any bearing on the original verdict. And that's, I think, as you pointed out when you were talking to Matt, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Right. So wait a minute. It wouldn't have any bearing on the original ruling. So now we have all this evidence that it was a controlled demolition. All of the thousands of pages of documents and evidence have come out now. And that wouldn't have any bearing on the fact that the buildings probably would never have gone down if it wasn't for the controlled demolition of the buildings, right? As you've covered on our show, fires in large skyscrapers have never in the history of skyscrapers brought a building down. Fires, just a simple fire, which is what happened after the planes crashed into the towers. A controlled demolition is arguably the only reason that those towers came down. That's a huge piece of this puzzle.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And the decision was it was mind-boggling. And I think a lot of people, a lot of supporters in the 9/11 community sort of thought, well, of course, that was always the way it was going to go, right? The Attorney General is going to deny their application. But in reality, the Attorney General doesn't have any discretion. They're supposed to apply a simple legal test to the application that the family submitted 2 years ago, and they failed to do that. And the fact that they withdrew their decision, which our barrister, Nick Stanage, has advised, is extremely rare. I mean, he's never heard of a case of where the Attorney General has withdrawn the decision before undergoing judicial review, is an indication of just how weak their decision was.
Why do you think they reversed their decision? I mean, it was a pretty crazy decision in the first place, and we were all, I mean, I think everyone in who was following the story was pretty dejected by it. Oh, here we go. Maybe our one chance of getting answers, we just hit a wall now. Why do you think they reversed course?
Well, the simple answer is that their decision is not defensible, and if it had gone to judicial review, it would have been struck down. And so. And they, maybe didn't feel like fighting a fight that they knew they were going to lose. That would take months, if not years. And that would also cost a lot. And so in British law, there's a possibility where if the Campbell family had eventually won their case and we had gone through months or years of litigation, that the Attorney General would have had to reimburse the Campbell family for their costs, which could total tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the Attorney General was like, you know what, let's not do this. Let's withdraw this decision. We know that we're going to lose. And we don't see any way that, there's a possibility. Who knows? I think your viewers may say, be rightly skeptical of the authorities anywhere in the UK or in the US, what have you, and say, oh, well, they got some other trick up their sleeve. We really don't think that there's any way that they can have a viable argument for why this application should not go forward, and so we're confident. And if they do, we will go through the process that we were already about to initiate of seeking judicial review and eventually winning in a court of law. But let's hope we don't have to go there, and we should have a decision within a couple of months.
So after the decision in a couple of months, we go through the review process. Then what? We actually have an inquest. And can you, before I'll get you out of here on that question, what does the inquest look like? How long could the inquest take? And will it be impartial, or are we just waiting for the inevitable whitewashing of it and they're going to sweep it back under the rug once again during the inquest?
Yeah, really good questions. So the next step, if the Attorney General grants her authority for the Campbell family to apply to the High Court for a fresh inquest, is that the Campbell family will do that. There's one more hoop to jump through, which is the High Court. The High Court historically has always ruled the way that the Attorney General has ruled. So there's not much doubt that that would be successful. And then once the High Court grants the fresh inquest and quashes the original one, it'll probably be about a year before the inquest gets started. And this inquest would be held by the West London coroner, the West London Coroner's Court. Our barrister advises that it would probably take 2 to 4 weeks, the actual process of the inquest. And we will be in court. Matt Campbell and his family, the barrister, members of my organization, International Center for 9/11 Justice, will be in court making the case that these buildings were brought down by controlled demolition. And we, Nick, our barrister, he's an assistant coroner, right? So he actually serves as a coroner himself. And so he understands this system very well. He's quite confident that we're going to get an objective assessment of the evidence, unbiased, fact-based assessment. And we will make sure of that. Now, we want the coroner to bring in the National Institute of Standards and Technology. We would love for the coroner to look at all of the evidence, look at all of the arguments, and realize that the evidence is overwhelming that it was controlled demolition. So that's the process that we're looking at happening a year and a half from now. And this is going to be huge headlines if it happens. Like inquests are widely reported in the UK. In any inquest on any sort of, notable case is widely reported on. And of course, this is going to, if we are successful, and we are optimistic, this will galvanize, we think, many dozens, hundreds, even thousands of 9/11 family members to also seek the truth and seek justice. And it really could be a turning point.
Yeah, I think that's the understatement of the year. This could make headlines. Yes, yeah. If the inquest allows that evidence to come forward to show that this was a controlled demolition, and I mean, it's a game changer. I mean, everything that people think they know about the 9/11 attacks is going to be turned on its head. And I would encourage our audience to go and watch our deep dive interview on the controlled demolition piece of this. We didn't spend a lot of time on it today because you and I have sat down and done nearly an hour-long interview about the specifics of the controlled demolition. So we'll link that up in the description below. People can go and check and watch that whole interview. Also, my interview with Kevin Ryan, where we detailed how the hijackers were clearly not responsible for bringing those planes down, and that's equally compelling. So the work that you're doing, shining a light on this, is second to none. So Ted, thank you so much for this. Thank you for the big update, and we are hopeful that maybe we'll get some answers. Thank you so much, Ted.
Thank you, Clayton. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, Ted. Thank you. And again, thanks to the team there at the Center for 9/11 Studies, basically diving into this and really shining a light on it. And so thank you, so many of you who watched our documentary, also our interview with Kevin Ryan. I encourage all of you to watch that over the past few days, where we went and did a deep dive on the hijackers and how there's really no possible way that they could have actually carried out the takeover of those airplanes. So dive into that interview with Kevin Ryan. Amazing stuff here. So thank you guys so much for allowing us to shine a light on the 9/11 attacks, because I think it's time. It's time.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot more stories to get to. And also, I'd like to point out a chat that we just saw. Do you want to highlight this?
Yeah,
viewer?
So Jeff Costello, thank you for this kind chat here in YouTube. Jeff says, from Wilmington, North Carolina, he says, I ran into a redacted fan at a local grocery store. She saw my redacted t-shirt and she stopped me to say hello and make sure the redacted on my shirt was Natalie and Clayton's show. And that's so awesome. I love that.
I'm tickled pink by that. Thank you for sharing that. Two fans
viewers
in the wild.
Two viewers running into the grocery store. That's awesome.
Yeah. I wish I was there too.
More of you out there. That'd be amazing. Can you imagine turning off CNN, turning off Fox News, and turning to independent media? That's amazing. So thank you, Jeff. And thanks to the lady that said hello to you.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about COVID vaccines and the latest FDA approval. They are based on, so I can't even say smoke and mirrors, but you decide for yourself. We're going to go through that. We're also going to talk about this new debate on net neutrality, how it is yet another government power grab. And we're going to have a guest telling us about recent upticks in turbo cancers. And you can take a guess why you think that is, but listen to the expert. We're going to bring you that on Rumble only. So those two data points, the fact that it'll be on Rumble only, may give you a clue.
And it's
but don't jump to conclusions.
And Dr. William Mackis is going to be joining us from Canada. So it's this is the first time that Dr. Mackis is going to be joining us here on the show. Of course, the mainstream media has attacked him, tried to fact check him, but he's not giving up. He's doing amazing work. So he's going to be joining us in just a little bit here on the show. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Moomoo. It's our favorite trading platform, and you can get up to 16 free stocks right now just by signing up using our link right there on your screen. If you go to redacted.inc/Moomoo, you can get up to 16 free stocks just for